All right, welcome back. Here we are in Module 3 of the Fix and Flip class. In this module, we are going to be discussing red flags, all of the things to look out for as you're getting into fix and flip properties. And I'm excited to discuss some of the tactics that we use to actually turn these red flags, instead of running away from red flags, turning them into additional income potential as you're working on these properties. So let's dive in. Now, as we do with each and every module, we have to share our disclaimer with you. So that disclaimer simply says that I am not a licensed attorney, accountant, financial advisor, broker, or any other licensed individual. Even if I had a license, I'm not acting in that capacity. I'm just a student. I'm a real estate investor, just like you guys. I have just developed some incredible systems over the last several years of real estate investing, and I want to share those systems with you. So hopefully that works for everybody. Let's dive in. Let's start talking about our red flags. So let's talk about the idea that fixing and flipping is a get-rich-quick scheme. It is not. Fixing and flipping is a business, and you have to operate it. You have to, you're going to have startup costs. You're going to have, you're going to have a learning curve. You're going to have to develop this business over years of working in it. That doesn't mean you're not going to make money that whole time. That's absolutely possible and doable. But keep in mind that just like any business, it's going to take long-term care and love and blood, sweat, and tears to make it successful to the level that you want it to be successful. So keep in mind that fixing and flipping is a first dollar activity. If you want more information on that, I talk about the difference between first dollar activities and second dollar activities in our mindset course. But just as a quick definition, a first dollar activity is anything that you do that pays you once. And then if you want to get paid again, you have to go do another one. So your job is an example of a first dollar activity. You work an hour, you're going to get paid for an hour, but you want to get paid again, you got to work another hour, right? Fixing and flipping is the same way. You do one fix and flip, you're going to get paid once, but if you want to get paid again, you have to go do another fix and flip in order to continue to make money in that arena. It's not a great retirement plan. You're not going to be wanting to do fix and flips when you're 90 years old. So don't look at it as a way to build for retirement. And if you watch the mindset class, we talk about how the accumulation strategy of just socking a whole bunch of money away into a retirement account is also not a great retirement plan. So maybe review that class. If your plan was to do a whole bunch of fix and flips and just save up a whole bunch of money for retirement, there's probably some better ways to do that than that particular method. Fixing and flipping is a great way to make operational income, to increase your bottom line and get yourself some good cash to live on. But I like to use fixing and flipping as a way to go out and generate capital to go buy rental properties with, which are a great retirement strategy. Rental properties are what I refer to as a second dollar activity, where it's a decision that you make once that pays you continually. Over and over and over again. So I use my first dollar activities to make money to go buy second dollar assets that will pay me forever, even when I'm retired. Owning rental properties and having property managers manage them is something that you can do when you're 90 years old, and something that I would recommend to do, when you're 90 years old as your retirement plan. All real estate transactions come with a certain level of unavoidable risk. Always keep that in mind. The goal of this class is to show you how to do it with the minimum amount of risk possible, but there's still risk. So know that going into it. But keep in mind, there's risk in everything you do. There's risk in driving to your job in the morning. There's risk in getting out of bed. There's risk in just being alive by itself. So, when we talk about risk, that is not unique to real estate investing. That's unique to life. So the goal here is that we minimize the risk as much as possible with knowledge and education, but keep in mind there's always risk in investments. You can minimize your risk with knowledge, but you can't ever get rid of it completely. Fixing and flipping requires time, dedication, work ethic, and knowledge. If you want to build true wealth with the fix and flip strategy, you have to scale. No one's going to become wealthy off of doing one fix and flip. No one's going to become a millionaire off of doing one fix and flip, or even one fix and flip at a time. This is a business. If you're going to take it seriously, this is a business you have to scale. And the systems that I'm going to teach you in this class are going to help you scale that business while taking on as little risk as possible. And remember to take the good with the bad. You are going to have properties that don't work out the way you expect them to work out. That is just part of it. That's part of investing. That's part of taking your financial life to the next level. That's just part of it. So get used to that. Anytime anybody tells me they never lost money on a real estate transaction or a real estate deal, I immediately question that, because it's something where you just got to go out and get good at it, and most of them are going to pay you well, but some of them don't. So be prepared for that. Be mentally prepared for that, but don't let it paralyze you. Don't let that be something that detracts from your desire to go out and do this, because one of the main purposes of me teaching you how to do this at scale is scale lowers risk. If you've got one fix and flip property, well, it's either going to make money or it's not. So you either make money or you don't. But if you're doing 3 at a time, or 5 at a time, or 10 at a time, if one of them loses money, no big deal, because the other 9 will make money. And then that offsets that loss. So we're also going to talk about strategies to make sure that if you do have a property that surprises you and looks like it's going to be a loss, we've got some exit strategies that we're going to teach you in order to convert that property into a different strategy, so that you don't lose money, so that you can actually end up making more money. The only drawback is you end up holding it a little bit longer. So we'll talk about all of that stuff. Just be aware of the fact that fixing and flipping and real estate investing in general are not get-rich-quick activities. The next red flag we're going to talk about: know your exit strategies. We talked about this in the previous red flag. So know your exit strategies. Turning a failed fix and flip into a rental is a great way to prevent you and your money partners from losing money on a property. Air cash flow is another great way. I recently had to convert a fix and flip that we just held too long into an Airbnb, and now it's cash flowing thousands of dollars a month that's going into the pockets of myself and my money partners. So air cash flow, Airbnb, VRBO, it's a great alternative strategy if you need to hold on to a fix and flip a little longer than expected. Lease option. There's no shame in holding on to a property for an extra year if it's not selling. If everything goes to plan and you put it on the market but it just doesn't sell, lease it out and do it with a lease option. And we're going to have a whole class on this, but just for quick reference, what a lease option is it's a standard lease. It's a standard rental agreement, maybe for a year or 2 years, but it includes an option for the renter to purchase the property at the end of their lease, and usually is accompanied by a down payment, or what's referred to as an option payment, where they're purchasing the exclusive rights to purchase that property at the end of their lease for a specified amount of money. And oftentimes that option payment, I like to use an option payment of $10,000 when I'm lease optioning a property. That $10,000, if they execute the option, goes towards their purchase price. But if they choose not to execute the option, you as the owner of the property get to retain that as a fee for saving that property exclusively for them. So either way, you get to keep that option payment. If they do end up executing the option, it just goes towards the purchase price. So seller finance is another great way to do it. If you've got your financing in place to where you can hold that property long term, it increases, if you're having trouble selling it, it increases your chances of finding a buyer if you can also appeal to those who are a little bit under the credit threshold to be able to go out and get a mortgage. You can put those people in your property, and rather than leasing it to them, sell it to them on a payment agreement. And if they fail to make their payments, well, just like the bank gets to foreclose on you if you don't make your payments, you get to foreclose on them if they don't make their payments. The nice thing about seller finance is because you don't own the property anymore, you're not responsible to maintain it and to fix it up. The owners are, right? You're just the mortgage company in a seller finance sale situation. Did you structure the money right? Do you have enough equity to be able to execute these exit strategies that we're talking about? The debt equity blend is my favorite way to structure fix and flips. We've got a whole module in this class reviewing the debt equity blend, as well as we go over a lot of the debt equity blend and a lot of other ways to structure, to safely structure both fix and flips, rentals, you name it, in the funding deals using other people's money course. So make sure you check that out as well. You're going to need, if you use the debt equity blend, you're going to need to know how to replace your debt with traditional financing, or replace that debt with new equity partners. So we're going to go into that in a future module. Just be aware that your exit strategies, they need to be in place before you purchase the property. You need to know what you're going to do outcome A happens, what you're going to do if outcome B happens, what you're going to do if outcome C happens. You need to think ahead and have those exit strategies in place so that you can make sure that you structure the property and the money in a way that's going to allow you to use those exit strategies if you need to. Now let's go on to the next red flag: overpaying or investing emotionally. Follow the systems. When you follow the system, you're more likely to have your project turn out the way you want it to. When you start getting off the beaten path, when you start doing things that are outside of the system, that's when it becomes more and more risky. This should be something that's just an assembly line for you. You bring a property in, it goes through the system, you apply the process to it, and it goes out the back end and makes you money. And you just do that over and over and over again, all day, every day. But as you start to get off the beaten path with those systems, it starts taking longer, it starts costing more, and you start making more mistakes because you're doing new things that you're not experienced in. Your quick analysis and your long analysis will protect you. We've got modules and modules on that in the off-market deals on tap class, so make sure you review that. Always rely on the math. It's a deal or not a deal based on the math, and your quick analysis should be the first thing that will cue you in on whether it's a deal or not a deal. But it's always, always, always based on the math, not based on your emotion. Set your minimum desired profit and do not vary from that, not even by $1. So I have a minimum desired profit on a fix and flip of $30,000. If my quick analysis comes back and says that I'm going to make $29,000, I either decrease my purchase price, my offer price by $1,000, or I decline to do the deal, because that profit margin is what pays you. It's what pays your equity partners, and it also acts as an emergency buffer if there are surprises in the property. So if you if you get too low with that minimum desired profit, then you start to lose that slush fund. That's important as a buffer between the deal making money and losing money. So let's talk about the next red flag. So the next red flag is getting lazy with the analysis. Make sure that your comps are solid. Make sure that your after repair value is solid, and that's usually based on comparables. We talked about comparables in the definitions module. We also go deeply into how to calculate after repair value and how to generate comps inside of the off-market deals on tap class. So I'm just going to kind of glaze over it here. If you want more information on that, check out the off-market deals on tap class. Make sure that you analyze and account for all the repairs that need to be done, the money costs, which are your acquisition costs, your closing costs, those types of things. Make sure that you're aware of the time on market. So have a good idea of the timeline in the construction phase, as well as give yourself a little bit of padding, maybe 1 or 2 months, to be able to go through the sale process of having it on the market, having it, and then having it under contract, and having your future buyer getting all of their financing in place. That process by itself, the financing for the future buyer, usually takes at least 30 days. So make sure you're accounting for that as you're looking at your timeline, which will also affect your holding costs. And then always make sure that you account for your closing costs. Always analyze a property conservatively. Don't try to squeeze the numbers to make a deal work. If it's not a deal, it's not a deal. You don't want to get hurt doing this. You don't want to lose money doing this. That's not why we're doing it. So don't squeeze numbers to try to make a non-deal become a deal. Be conservative with your numbers, because things happen, and things happen often. And a lot of times when things happen, it costs money. So always be conservative, because that will leave you with a pleasant surprise at the end rather than a frustrating surprise at the end of a project. So just make sure that you're analyzing a property well and conservatively. Our next red flag: squatting sellers. I will never close on a property until I know for a fact that the seller has moved out, that the property is vacant, and that I have done at least one walkthrough on the property to know it's in the condition that I expect it to be in. Now, I don't have a high bar for the condition of properties. If usually I've walked through a property. If it is occupied, I've walked through it with the current homeowners or tenants there. and I can see kind of generally what condition the property's in. But what we want to make sure of is before we close on it that they haven't taken a sledgehammer to the walls, or backed their car or their moving van and crushed the roof or the side of the house. We want to make sure that they're gone, all of their stuff's out before we close on the property, so we can do just one final walkthrough, whether that's you or an inspector or an agent, if it's a property that's far away from you, or do it personally if it's close to you. But you want to make sure you inspect that and make sure that the sellers aren't there when you close. It should be vacant when you close on the property. Now, another red flag, doing all the work yourself. A lot of people think that a fix and flip project is a construction project. It's not. We are investors. We are not contractors. This is not about going and swinging a hammer and using a drill and a saw. The investing is about finding properties, raising the money, negotiating, and closing, and then just repeating that process over and over and over and over again. And some of the excuses, some of the arguments that I hear is, but it'll save me money if I do all the work. Not true. You need to specialize in being an investor. If you try to be a jack of all trades, if you try to be a great plumber and a great electrician and a great sheetrocker and a great framer, that will take you decades to master all of those trades, which means that most of us are actually amateurs at all of those things. So we will do a worse job at it. We're only going to be saving the amount of money that you're or paying yourself the amount of money that you save. So it's just not worth it. I would rather have you, rather than trying to save money on one project by doing the work, I'd rather have you go out and scale your business and exponentiate the amount of money that you're going to make by doing multiple properties at a time and just hiring contractors and landscapers and property managers to do what they're best at. Get good at finding, funding, negotiating, and closing. Rinse and repeat for the highest profits. If you think it's expensive to hire a professional, try hiring an amateur. Like I said, most of us are amateurs, right? And we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things terribly that might affect the ability to close. We may even have to hire a professional to come in and clean up the mess that we made by trying to do it ourselves. So, and all of those things end up being way more expensive in the long run than if you just hired a professional to do it, in the short term. So, and take it from somebody who's made mistakes in this arena before. It's just so much cheaper just to pay a professional to do it right the first time than trying to do it yourself, save a buck, and it ends up costing you 10 when it would have only costed you 2 or 3 just to do it right the first time in the first place. You're only paying yourself what you save. Build a precedent for the future. I've had students come to me and say, yeah, but this is my first one. I'm not going to do it on every project, but in order to make this one work, I've got to go in and do all the demo. I've got to go in and do the carpet and the tile. So I'm going to go do those things to make this one work. No, because you're building a precedent for the future of your business. You didn't buy your education just to go out and do one fix and flip. You bought your education to build a career around this and to build a future around this. So build a precedent for that future. You are the investor. Put the aces in their places, hire the contractors to do the construction, hire the agents to do the agenty things, right? Leave the title stuff up to your title company. You are the investor. Focus on the activities of investing. And as we said above, that's finding, funding, negotiating, and closing. If your deal hinges on you making a profit by you doing all the work, you've got a problem. You're not doing it right? So let's focus on sticking to the system. And when we stick to the system, that will maximize our profits. So the next red flag is structural concerns. Now, we're going to talk a lot about inspections in future modules in this class. So, back to the last slide, aces in their places. You should always have a professional inspector inspect the property before you buy it. But it's not a bad idea for you to do your own inspection as well, in addition to the professional inspector. And when I do that, I like to use the right hand rule. Now, the right hand rule is just, if you keep your right shoulder or your right hand on the wall and you just follow that wall, you will eventually see every room, every closet, every nook and cranny of that floor and of that house. So, when you walk in the front door, turn to the right, keep your right shoulder against the wall, and just follow that wall all the way around, and you will eventually see everything you need to see. Now, while you're doing that, look for load-bearing walls. Load-bearing walls are walls inside the house that are important to the structure of the house. A lot of cases, if you remove load-bearing walls, you will be compromising the structure of the house, which can be very dangerous, and also will pull the house out of the building code. So you want to make sure that you're compliant with the building code. Make sure that you know which walls are load-bearing walls and which ones are not. If you need help with that, I'm not going to explain that process to you because I am also an amateur here. If you feel like you need help with that, reach out to a contractor or an inspector to help you identify which walls are load-bearing walls. Noisy floors. This is usually caused by nails in the subfloor. If you ever walked over a floor and you hear it squeak, that's usually caused by the nails working their way back out. And then as you put weight on that area of the floor, the subfloor is moving up and down on that nail, causing that squeaky sound. You can fix those squeaks just simply by, when you pull up the carpet or the tile, just put screws back in right next to the nails, and it will securely hold that subfloor down to the joists and will prevent the floor from squeaking. Pay attention to plumbing stink. Smell the house. If after flushing 2 toilets at once the house stinks like sewage, you may have a plumbing problem. There can be a lot of causes to that, and that's just going to be a sign to you that you're going to have some plumbing issues, and there's going to be a little bit of some cost there in plumbing. Vents. Verify that there are HVAC vents in every room. These are the vents that the air conditioning and the heat comes out of. If there are not, be sure that the furnace, if you're keeping it, can handle additional vents, because in most areas you either need heat or cooling. I know in some areas in the country, very few areas don't require either, but most areas either require heat or cooling or both. I live in an area that requires both. So, the building code will require that you have a vent in each and every livable space. So that includes front rooms, kitchens, bathrooms, bedrooms. Closets are not livable spaces, so you don't need to worry about that. Garages are not livable spaces, so you don't need to worry about that. But just in the livable spaces, make sure there's a vent in every room as you're doing your personal inspection. Electrical. Check the panel for additional space. So in your breaker panel, you can see the breakers with the switches on them, and you can also see if there's additional space to add more breakers. Just check it and see if there's additional space for more breakers. If you're planning on adding bedrooms or adding bathrooms or changing up the electrical, you may need some additional space on that breaker panel. If you're not going to do any of that stuff, then that's less important. But also watch for wiring to nowhere. Sometimes there's wires hanging out of the ceiling that you don't know what they're coming from, and you don't know where they're going, or they might be in a wall, or they might be in an unfinished room in the basement. Pay attention to that stuff. That is stuff. Wiring to nowhere usually puts you out of the building code. So you're going to need an electrician to come in and fix that so that you're compliant with the building code, so that you can sell the property on the back end. Plumbing. Additional bathrooms or kitchens should be near other plumbing. So as you're kind of deciding, hey, we need to add a bathroom here, make sure it's on a wall that already has plumbing in it, so that you don't rack up a huge bill running plumbing to a section of the house where it's not currently run. Usually plumbing is something that you can just kind of tap into if it's close by. So make sure plumbing is close by if you're going to be adding more plumbing to your project. Check the roof. Check for shingle layers and compare to the building code in your area. A lot of places only require two layers or less of shingles. If you add a third, then you're out of building code, right? So if the roof needs attention, if it needs to be reshingled, it's gonna cost you less if you can just lay another layer of shingles on the top of the existing layer of shingles. But you need to be aware of the building code in your area to make sure that that's something that you can actually do, and that you're not going to have to tear the existing shingles off to re-roof. That will cost you more. So use contractors and inspectors, aces in their places. You're going to hear that a lot in this class, and I mean it. That's important in fixing and flipping. To really make a sustainable business out of fixing and flipping, you have to have contractors doing the contractor stuff, inspectors doing the inspector stuff, so that you, as the investor, can focus on the investor stuff. So let's talk about the next red flag. I've seen this one happen, working backwards. This is what happens if you don't have a plan of what order the repairs should be done in. And it will not only cost you time, it will also cost you profits. Because if you put the cabinets and the flooring in before you do the electrical and the plumbing, then the plumber's got to come in and rip out the cabinets and do the plumbing, and then you got to pay to have the cabinets put back in, and that can just be a headache. So make sure that you have a good idea of what order things should be done in. Consult your contractor, right? A lot of this is just logic. We're obviously going to want to do the plumbing and electrical before we put the cabinets in. We're obviously going to need to do the cabinets before we schedule the granite. We're obviously going to need to have the flooring in before the cabinets go in, right? So just make sure that you think through the order that you're doing things in, and make sure you create a timeline so that order isn't disrupted. I always rely on my contractors to help me create that timeline because they are professionals when it comes to construction, and I am not. Taking the time to think from the inside out and top to bottom is always a good way to put a plan together. Remember to do the structural items before the cosmetics. Don't paint before you, if you're going to add a wall or add a bedroom, don't do paint in the rest of the house before you do the structural stuff, obviously, right? So remember, structural before cosmetics. Countertops, cabinets, they're all cosmetic stuff. Make sure you're doing the plumbing, the HVAC, the electrical, the drywall, all of those things, the painting before you do the cosmetic stuff. Repair the roof before fixing the ceiling. If you got water damage on the ceiling, don't go in and fix the water damage if you haven't already repaired the roof, because one rainstorm is going to come by and it's going to ruin what you just fixed, and you're going to have to pay to do it again. Paint the kitchen walls before installing the cabinets, right? Because it's going to cost you more. The painter will charge you more if he has to mask off all of the cabinets. Rather than if you pull out the old cabinets and it's just an empty room in the kitchen, they can go in and paint the walls, and then you just put the cabinets over the top of it, and he has nothing to mask off. It's less work, it's less labor, therefore it's less cost. Just make sure that you've got the order of things in place. And then get references on your contractors, especially your general contractor. And don't just ask for the references and then do nothing, because I've seen people do that, and that's silly. If you're going to ask for references, use them, call them. Ask the people how they liked working with the general contractor or the subcontractors, and if they would recommend that you use them as well. Okay, let's move on to the next red flag. Insufficient cash flow. This is an important one. It doesn't do you any good to have potential profits in the thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands if you can't pay your own rent or necessities of life. I've seen people get in a lot of trouble this way. When we talk about using other people's money, there are laws around that. There are, that we have to be straightforward about what we're using that money for. And if you say that all of that money is going to go to the project, then all of the money needs to go to the project. Dipping into the funds is illegal, and you shouldn't be doing it. I mean, dipping into the funds for you to pay your rent or to pay for your groceries. It's illegal, and you shouldn't be doing it. So don't do it. Make sure that you have your own personal financial situation in at least a manageable place before you go out and start using other people's money to fund fix and flips and other real estate type transactions. Before you rush out and quit your job, complete 5 or more transactions, fix and flips or rentals or whatever it is you're doing, in this case, fix and flips, and make sure that you've at least replaced your annual income before you quit your job. That's what I did. I feel like I did it right, where I went out and I made, at the time I was making $40,000 a year at my job. I made $40,000 in fix and flips, doing fix and flips before I quit that job. So make sure that before you go out and quit your job, you're not going to be making money tomorrow on a fix and flip. It takes months to cash your check on a fix and flip. So make sure that you have at least replaced your income before you quit your job. Just make it a part-time thing until that happens. And then once you're to a point where, your part-time gig is outpacing your full-time gig, well, it's time to start getting rid of the full-time gig, and the part-time gig becomes the full-time gig, right? So that's the point where your real estate investing career becomes your main source of income. Replace your income. Last red flag. Oh, no, I don't think this is the last one. We got a couple more. But the next red flag, neglecting to secure a property. Make sure that you have contracts in place. If you're talking to a homeowner, don't just do a verbal contract, because I can guarantee someone else will come along and they will offer less than you, or they will, more than you, or they will, they'll buy it out from under you. It's happened over and over and over again. I've seen it happen to students. It happened to me early on a couple of times. Make sure that you have contracts in place when you're buying a property. Use your real estate purchase contract. Make sure you have contracts in place with your contractors to outline the nature of your relationship and how working together is going to look. Make sure that you have contracts with your partners. If they're bringing money in, don't just do it on a handshake, because that gets messy and usually ends up in a lawsuit. So make sure that you've got joint venture agreements, or even going as far as, if you're going to use partners multiple times, maybe starting an LLC with them, which has an operating agreement in place. But make sure you have those contracts in place to outline the nature of your relationship with the sellers, with the buyers, with your contractors, with your partners, with your agents. Make sure you have those agreements in place. And some people say, well, I don't like asking my relationships in good standing to sign contracts. Well, if they're people that are worth working with, and they're people that are used to working with a lot of money, then they're going to understand that contracts keep friends friends, right? You go out and do a handshake deal with a friend and it ends up going different than you expected. Usually you lose the friendship over it. But a contract outlines what happens in certain scenarios, and that keeps the partnership and the friendship intact. Make sure that you transfer the utilities into your name. That can cause a heartache with the title company, with the previous owners. Just make sure that you do that. Having your insurance in place. Oh man, that is a big one. Make sure that you have your insurance in place on each and every property, because if you don't and something happens, you are holding the bag for everything. If one night, that property starts on fire and burns to the ground and you don't have insurance on it, you are holding the bag for everything. Insurance takes 15 minutes to set up, and a few $100s for a 6-month policy. So worth it. Do not do a deal without insurance. Make sure that you have lock boxes on the property. Don't just put the key under the mat, right? Because that's easy for people to come in and find. That's an obvious place to hide a key. So that's the first place that someone that's interested in breaking into your property is going to look. Make sure you have lock boxes in discrete places. I like to put my lock boxes on the gas meter on the outside of the house. Make sure that you've got lighting. Exterior lighting is going to discourage people from wanting to enter the home. Security systems, cameras, even having fake cameras. They don't have to be real. I mean, they can be real, but even having fake cameras that you put up, that cost you $5 on Amazon or whatever. If it looks like the property's under surveillance, nobody's going to risk it, right? So, those are great deterrents from having people trying to break into your property. Signage, like no trespassing signs or beware of dog signs. Doesn't matter if a dog's there or not. Put a sign out. It'll deter people from trying to get into your property. And teenagers and people that may have a malicious intent in breaking into your property. Passersby. I mean, anybody could potentially look at a property and say, hey, that's vacant. Homeless people. I've seen homeless people try to break in properties that I've had just for shelter, right? So there's so many reasons to make sure that you're securing your property and making sure that it stays secured during your ownership. Because in a fix and flip, if you're doing it right, it's going to be vacant. And that means that there's not going to be someone there constantly to make sure that the property is secure. So take care, take precautions, and be proactive about making sure that you've got good security in each and every one of your properties. The next red flag is understanding your target market. So you are creating a product with a fix and flip, and you're creating a product with a demographic in mind. You're not going to buy a house in a mid-range demographic neighborhood and put $1 million into it and try to sell it to someone that's a multimillionaire, because they don't want to live in a neighborhood where they're surrounded by middle to low income individuals. That's just how it goes. I don't make the rules. That's just the way that buyers behave. So make sure that you are speaking to your target demographic. Know your target demographic. Am I buying this in a low end neighborhood? Am I buying this in a mid range neighborhood? Am I buying this in a high range or a high end neighborhood? And then your construction and your design should cater to that demographic. In one market, you may have to put in granite countertops, and in the next, just a few blocks away, it may not be appropriate to put in granite, and you might want to use laminate, like a laminate countertop type thing. So just be aware of the changes that you'll make to your template based on the neighborhoods that you're in and your target demographic when you're selling the property. You should give the market what it wants, not what your personal preferences are. So just because you like granite doesn't mean that you're going to put granite in every house, because some of your lower end flips that you do may not call for granite. So don't waste the money. You're not going to live there. You're not even going to see it after you sell it. So don't worry about it. This is about making money. This isn't about what you would want if you lived there. Use comps. Look at the surrounding marketplace to see what sells. And I'm talking about design, in that arena. Usually your comparables are based on listed and sold properties. So those listings from those sold properties will usually be accompanied by pictures. You can look at the pictures and see, okay, are they putting granite in? Are they putting tile in? Or am I okay getting away with laminate flooring and laminate countertops? Those types of things. Just because you spend money on a project does not always mean that you will get the money back out. Make sure that the choices that you're making are right and that they're profitable. And then always look at the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, the number of storage. I live in a state where people tend to have large families, so the number of bedrooms is important. The more bedrooms we can fit into a house, the more likely it's going to sell, right? Things may be different in your state. People might be focused more on, entertaining areas, having a larger family room or a larger kitchen and fewer bedrooms. Know your area, know your target demographic. The next red flag, we're going to talk about missing and hidden problems. So some of these might include lead-based paint, underground oil tanks, bugs like termites or bed bugs, or certain infestations within the home, which can even extend to rodents like mice and rats and other things. And that's going to vary based on where you live in the country. Meth is is a huge problem in the Mountain West where I live, and I know has a varying level of how it affects other states in the country. Some states have a very low problem with it. Some states have a very high problem with it. But it is something that has been deemed dangerous by the National Health Department. So you want to make sure that your home is clean of meth. All of these things, foundation issues, fire damage, all of these things should be addressed with the professional inspector that you hire to come and inspect the property in your long analysis phase. Now, if you need to review what the long analysis phase, that can be found in the off-market deals on tap class. But these are things that you should be specifically asking your inspector about and understanding, where those tests come back before you purchase the property. Now, if some of these tests come back positive, like meth, for example, I use a meth contaminated house to make more money. I actually want those houses because it means I can get a deeper discount on the house. And if a meth test comes back positive, I just go back to the seller and I say, hey, you may not have known this, but you got meth in your house. Here's the test to prove it. And I'm still willing to buy your house, but I need to buy it at a significantly lower price. I usually drop the price anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000. And the nice thing is it usually only takes me $3,000 to $5,000 to remediate the meth in the house and get it passed off by the city. So, you can potentially make money on these issues. You just need to have an understanding that they're there, and then negotiate. I always like to negotiate at least double, if not more, the cost of fixing that problem as I'm renegotiating with the homeowner because of those problems. So you can turn these red flags into ways to make more money. You just need to know that they're there, because if you buy the property without looking for these things and they exist in the house, well, your buyer, when you finish, you do all the work to fix up the property, you go to sell the property, your buyer might find them. And then it's your problem, even though you had nothing to do with it. It was the previous owner or someone, that owned the property in the past that caused the problem in the first place. So know about the problems. That doesn't necessarily mean run away just because you find these problems. It can mean that, but it can also mean renegotiate with the seller, get a lower price that covers both fixing the problem and puts a little bit more profit into your bottom line. You may turn a base hit into a home run, right? So watch for those hidden problems. Failing and neglecting the Bing, the Bling. Let me try that again. Next red flag, neglecting the Bling. So what I see is that sometimes people get carried away with the idea of spend as little as possible on a property. That is so true. Spend as little as possible on the property. But if you go too far with that, in operating these systems, there's going to be some variance from one property to another, that you're going to need to take it on a case-by-case basis. But remember moderation in all things. Do not go overboard on trying to save money, because what you're going to end up with is a product that looks like you didn't put enough into it, and you end up not being able to sell it to your target demographic. Now, Bling is less important on the low end. If your target demographic is low income individuals, low end housing, then not as important. But in that mid range, and especially on the high end, if you're doing high end homes, Bling is so important. Granite and quartz countertops, pop filler faucet, custom tile backsplash, under cabinet lighting, double oven, jetted tub, rain shower head in the showers, heated bathroom floors, patio and deck, grass. These are all things that are going to be important, and you need to compare and make sure, especially if you're in that mid-range and definitely on the high-end demographics, you need to see what's going to be expected in that neighborhood by using comps and looking to see what they have in their properties. If you neglect these things, if you go bare minimum in a high-end property, you're probably going to end up holding on to it for a while. And the reason is because there are fewer high-end buyers than there are low-end buyers. You can make a lot more money doing high-end homes, but you have to make sure that you are speaking to your demographic. Don't neglect the bling, especially if you're working on the high end. Red flags are not something to be scared of. Rather, they are something to be aware of before you purchase a property to keep you safe and to potentially make you more money. We talked about this. Just because a red flag shows up doesn't mean you should run away from the deal. It could be something, look at it first as, can I make this something that makes me more money? And if the answer is no, then you might be looking at, okay, well, are we going to be able to get by even though this red flag came up on our current numbers? If the answer is yes, your decision. Either do the property or don't, right? But if those problems end up putting you below your minimum desired profit threshold, then run away. Cancel the contract, move on to the next one. There are plenty of deals out there. You don't need to take on a loser and end up losing money, because that's not why we're doing this. You're doing this to make money. So follow the system. Make sure you're taking all the steps to assure that you're making money on the properties that you're acquiring and that you're taking on as fix and flip projects. Now that wraps up our red flags module. Obviously, we're going to be talking about more red flags later on, and as we dive into some of the specifics. But that's just kind of a general overview of what red flags to watch out for. This wraps up module 3. In module 4, we are going to be going into our low stress formula and how to do fix and flips with as little stress and as little time requirement from you as possible. So I will see you guys in the next module.